Greetings to one and all who have joined the live stream. Today we are gathered here for the fifth expert talk in Dr. A.K. Singh Literary Club, which is organized by Department of English, Paktakavi Narsimha Mehta University, Junagadh. The Literary Club was inaugurated on 19th March 2025 in the loving memory of the Dr. Avdesh Kumar Singh sir by the department. It was done in the esteemed presence of Dr. A.K. Singh's wife, Dr. Kiran Singh Madam, who is also the advisor of Shri Aurobindo Internal Life Center, Oro University, Surat. Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Atul H. Bapodara sir, Dr. Ravi Jhala sir from Saurashtra University, and Professor Dr. Firoz Sheikh sir were also present in the inaugural. My name is Varun Pandya, currently a research scholar at the Department of English, Bhaktakavi Narsimha Mehta University. I gladly welcome you all in today's session. It is my honor to introduce you all to today's expert faculty, an academician and principal, respected Dr. Pramod R. Chauhan sir. Chauhan sir is currently serving and doing his duty as principal at Government Arts and Commerce College, Jam Khambadia. He has a vast pedagogical experience of over 27 years in the academic field. Apart from college duties, Chauhan sir also serves as a guide in English at Saurashtra University, nurturing the next generation of thinkers. Under his mentorship, two, uh, two scholars have already been awarded degrees of PhD, and two are currently pursuing uh, under his guidance. In the field of various research, Chauhan sir has presented a whopping amount of 32 research papers in various international, national, and state level seminars as well as conferences. Other than that, Chauhan sir was also government nominee in 25 grant in aid college interviews. He has also conducted AAA of 11 colleges and one university. He has been a NAC mentor for one college and government nominee in college two. You also frequently gets indulged in academic talks for the sake of enlightenment of young minds. He has presented two radio talks and have been invited as a guest speaker in at least 10 colleges where he has inspired countless minds. Chauhan sir is going to throw light on an extraordinary subject which is enlightened as the genesis of the pre-independence Indian English and the Hindi novel, a comparative study. Sir, I am handing over this session to you and request you to please enlighten us with your prolific knowledge and experience. Sir.
Thank Bhaktakavi Narsimha Mehta University and the English department for such a beautiful academic endeavor. I am also thankful because I have been a PhD student and a postgraduate student and an MPhil student of Dr. A.K. Singh. So this gives me an opportunity to pay my homage and tribute and my gratitude to my esteemed guide and guru. My today's topic is the genesis of the Indian English and Hindi novel, a contemporary, the genesis of the independent Indian English and Hindi novel, a comparative study. This happens to be a very vast subject, and doing justice within this stipulated time would be my humble endeavor. But I will try my best to do justice to it. Now, India as a land is of rich narrative tradition, and it can be traced to the time of Rigvedian Sanskrit, The Yama Yamani dialogue, Purvashi dialogue, among others, they serve as its evidence. Uh, uh, slide one. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata are extensive forms of narrative literature. The depiction of gallantry as a part of Indian culture has for centuries inspired and influenced the literature of the authors. The development of an appropriate relationship between man and society manifested the creation of several didactic tales such as the Brihat Kathas, Kathasarit Sagar, Hitopadesh, and Panchatantra among others. With the rise of Buddha's philosophical doctrine and Jain philosophical doctrine was created the Jatak Kathas and the Jain ballads. The Indian fictional literature, particularly novels in Indian languages, could have definitely not remained uninfluenced by this rich narrative tradition. Next, besides Sanskrit literature, the influence of the legends of gallantry, such as Chand Bardai's Prithviraj Raso, 12th century AD, Narpati Nalhag's Visaldev Raso, 11th century AD, Saranghal's Amir Raso, 14th century AD, and Ala Udal, among others, too cannot be overlooked. The Sufi works like Jaisi's Padmavat, 1540, are the exquisite mingling of fiction and history also cannot be overstated. Though the narrative tradition exists in a verse form, they have served as a source of origin for the novel. It should not be forgotten that it was the need of the age to have literary forms in verse. Had Chandvardai or Jaisi been alive today, they would have preferred the prose form to verse in depicting the account of the lives of their heroes and heroines. Next, the Sufi poetry and the contemporary novel have many things in common. The attraction of the opposite sex in their youth, the mutual desire of their union, and the obstacles of religion and society, among others, are the common characteristics in both these literatures. Regarding the proximity of the narrative tradition and the novel, when compared from the point of view of character development of the hero and the heroine, and ignoring the form registration, the Hindi novel is closer to the Indian narrative tradition in Sanskrit, Abransh, Pali, and Lok Bhashas than the English novel of the West that came to India with the advent of the English language throwing light on the scenario. Prior to the advent of the novel, Premchand remarks, I quote, before the advent of the novel, there were narratives in the form of Qissa and Kahani, dealing predominantly with the themes of love and separation. The lover used to become a victim of the amorous glances of his beloved. The beloved, the beloved would then tell the story of his suffering to his friends. Mr. Lover would sigh and beat his head and grow. Then the message was passed to the family members, friends, the relatives, and they used to gather to counsel him. The physicians would treat him, but the one suffering from the sickness of love would remain uncured by any medicine or counseling. However, after suffering the pangs of separation for months and years, both of them would meet through some coincidence. Usually, there used to be a strange, magical, manipulating detective scenes that would arouse curiosity in the readers. In this tradition, Tilis Boshruba in Urdu was written in 27 volumes and Bostan-e-Khayal in 7 volumes. By this time, there was nothing like a novel in Hindi. A few translations were certainly there, but there was no novel. Unquote. The colonial encounter with the British saw the transplantation of the novel in India, the cradle of narrative tradition. Apart from being a literary phenomenon, the rise of the novel in India was a social phenomenon too. Next, the years between 1818 and 1850 witnessed the emergence of prose as well as the appearance of the journals and periodicals in most of the Indian languages. This was also the period which saw the dawn of the age of reason, of rationalistic reaction against the established order, the age of great reforms, liberation, and individualism. Change in the economic order, the facilities of press, the newspapers, education, and the rise of the new professional class, among others, led to the rise of the new middle class that felt the need of the new literary form to express its new multidimensional issues. That form was novel. Next, the English literature in the West had crossed its first phase by the time the social reform spread, spirit of national awareness took roots, and a class of Western educated Indians came into contact with the literature and the culture of the West in India. These social reforms and changes first took place in Bengal before they did in any part of India. But the dawn of the era of prose and reason was not confined to Bengal alone. It was a pan-India phenomenon which manifested itself in due course of time in all the major languages of the country. Therefore, the credit for being the first novel in an Indian language goes to Bengali novelist goes to the Bengali novel Alir Dharer Dulal, 1854, by Pyari Chand Mitra. By the time the first novel in Hindi, Lala Srinivas Das's Pariksha Guru, 1882, was available, many good Bengali novels had been written. Just as Pariksha Guru, 1882, is considered to be the first novel in Hindi. Sasu Bahu Ni Ladai, 1862, is credited to be the first novel in Gujarati. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's Rajmohan's Wife, 1864, and Lal Bihari Dev's Govind Samant, 1874, are the claimants as being the first Indian novel in English. Thus, the novel in Hindi reached via Bengali. Most of the early Hindi novels were either translations or adaptations of the Bengali novel. In the later half of the 19th century, the novels of Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, Ramesh Dutt, Dwarkanath Ganguly, and Damodar Mukherjee were very popular, whose works were translated into Hindi. Thus the novel, thus the novel writers of this age acknowledged the Bengali supremacy in the field of literature. Next, Hindi novels of the pre-independence period can be classified into three categories: the Hindi novels before Premchand age, and post-Premchand age. The traces of the Hindi novel next can be found since 1800 to the present, where it is a very dynamic, experimentative, and living. Premchand is the first significant novelist who provides Hindi novel an identity and direction. A specific change in characteristics is observed with his advent on the Hindi novel scenario. Thus, the age from 1800 with the publication of Insa Allah Khan's Rani Ketki Ki Kahani and the arrival of Premchand with his Seva Sadan 1918 can be categorized as the age of the Hindi novel before Premchand. As the Hindi novel centers around Premchand, the pre-independent Hindi novel can be further categorized as the age of Premchand 1918 to 1936 and post-Premchand Hindi novel, that is 1936 to 1947. The first fictional prose work in the modern age, Inshallah Khan's Rani Ketki Ki Kahani, is a brief work primarily depicting the triumph of the love of Rani Ketki and Prince Udeban among, against parental opposition. Shyam Sundar Das presumes that this work was written by Inshallah Khan around 1800 AD. In the introduction, he further states that presumably the story was written between some months 1856 and 1865. The writer is conscious of his setting a new precedent of Hindi prose, or is rather laying the very foundation of Hindi prose. Prince Udevan and Prince Ketki fall in love with each other and wish to be married. The parents of Udevan agree, but the parents of Rani Ketki consider the status of the dynasty of Udevan inferior and not fit for the daughter. Raja Surajban wages a war on the kingdom of Rani Ketki's father, that is on the kingdom of Raja Jagat Prakash. Raja Jagat Prakash sends a message of distress to his guru, Gosai Mahinder Gir, who resides on the Kailash Parvat along with his devotees. Coming to his rescue, the Guru wreaks havoc on the army of Raja Surajban through a strong dust storm, hailstorm, and locusts. He even curses the family and transforms them into deers. But Rani Ketki could not forget Prince Udevan and one day disappears from the palace by applying the magical ashes given by the Guru. The disappearance of Rani Ketki brings a change of heart in her parents, who ultimately reconcile to the wishes of their daughter. With the help of Raja Inder, Guru Mandargir transforms Udevan and his parents to the original form, and festivities of the marriage take place on a grand scale. The language of the author is quite simple, lacking suspense in narrative, thus it is dry and resembling the essay. The only place where the writer has to some extent been able to raise some curiosity of the readers is when Gosai Mendergir is not in the position to trace Udeban and his parents, whom he has turned into deers. The failure of tracing Udevan and his parents could lead to serious consequences to the extent of the marriages of Rani Ketki being stalled. The work is simple, prose, quite unnovel-like, and lacks a specific plot. The delineation resembles the narrative prose. The characters too are flat and underdeveloped. Besides, for the change of heart of the parents of Rani Ketki for Prince Udevan, no specific change is found in them, nor do we find them to grow from the beginning to the end of the work. The two restrictions that the writer imposed upon himself in his works are the known usage of foreign words and the syntax similar to what we call Urduness. Regarding the contemporary language scenario, Shyam Sundar Das in the Bhumika of Rani Ketki की कहानी comments, I quote, हमारे प्रदेश में आधुनिक भाषाएं में पूर्व में अवधि, मध्य देश में ब्रजभाषा और पश्चिम में खड़ी बोली का प्रचार रहा। अनकोट। Gradually, Khadi Boli became popular for literary works and the usage of Awadhi and Brajbhasha declined. Shamsundar Das credits Inshallah Khan for popularizing Khadi Boli by creating Rani Kirti Ki Kahani through the same medium. Thus, the credit of providing a literary form to modern Hindi prose, that is the beginning of the use of Khadi Boli, goes to Sayyid Inshallah Khan along with Lallu Lal Prem Sagar 1802 and Sadal Mishra's Nasiketo Pakyan 1803. Next. Though the brief story is of no significance from the point of view of the novel form of the West, its importance of being among the first modern prose works cannot be denied as the work depicts certain modern characteristics such as the importance of love in marriage and individual freedom to love and marry according to one's choice. The use of the prose for the first time for expression itself is a revolutionary step in the Hindi literature. Language had been a major barrier for the growth of the Hindi novel. Had Khadi Boli been dominating, the other literary works would have quickly followed. The efforts of the prose domination and presenting the new mode of writing qualify Inshallah Khan as an important position in Hindi novel. Applying the rules of English novel to a Hindi work, when the English novel itself was in its early stages in England, and with more than half a decade before English education was introduced in India, would amount to discrediting the writer of his dedication and contribution to Hindi prose. Thus, it took another 77 years for the next work of Hindi novel, Shraddharam Filori's Bhagyavati, 1877, to appear on the Hindi literary scenario. Next, the transition of the language from Awadhi and Brajbhasha to Khadi Boli creates a vast gap of around 77 years until the publication of Shraddharam Filori's Bhagyavati. The author in the Bhumika reveals that the work's moral domination and socially educative nature. He remarks, I quote, बहुत दिनों से इच्छा थी कि कोई ऐसी पोथी हिंदी भाषा में लिखूं कि जिसके पढ़ने भारत खंड की स्त्रियों को गृहस्थ धर्म की शिक्षा प्राप्त हो, क्योंकि यद्यपि कोई स्त्री कुछ पढ़ी लिखी होती है, परंतु सदा अपने ही घर में बैठे रहने के कारण उनको देश विदेश की बोल चाल और अन्य लोगों से बरत व्यवहार की पूरी बुद्धि नहीं होती। Unquote. It is this didactic element of spreading awareness that provides the form to the work. Like most of the early Hindi prose, this work too begins with a story containing the dry narrative element and lacks curiosity and spectacle. The writer reveals the conclusion first and then narrates the incident. Consequently, he fails to maintain the curiosity of the readers. In his usual style, the novelist avers, I quote, अब भाग्यवती से अब भाग्यवती ने सारे परिवार से अलग होके जैसे अपनी बुद्धि बल से फिर सब पदार्थ इकट्ठे किए और आपत से संपत्ति में पहुंची, वह सारा वृत्तांत सुनने के योग्य है। Unquote. Thus, for the sake of depiction of the poetic justice, the writer in the next few pages depicts the pathetic, poverty-stricken condition of her unjust in-laws. The problem is not with this activity, but with the undue haste and artificial means of achieving it. The story ends with the reconciliation of Bhagavati and her in-laws. Thus, the gross story of 123 pages is just in 40 to 45 pages. The entire work is just a story, and the plot consists of just the linear, unconnected incidents being put one after another. Thus, the plot, the indispensable component of the novel, is really missing. Most of the incidents seem to be introduced with the only objective of highlighting the virtues, achievements, and characters of Bhagavati. The narration by the novelist is clearly suggestive of his objective. He narrates, I quote, भाग्यवती के धैर्य और क्षमा आदि के गुण कुछ अपने ही घर में नहीं थे. Unquote. The novelist then narrates the incidents of Bhagyavati, who tactfully handles a hot-headed and quarrelsome woman of a neighborhood. As soon as this incident is delineated, the novelist begins with a fresh incident. He avers, I quote, अब भाग्यवती की ये बात भी सुनने के योग्य है कि उसके गुण विद्या चतुराई, धैर्य, संतोष से अधिक उसका मन शूरवीर कैसा था. Unquote. The several subplots of Bhagyavati's in-laws, their leaving for pilgrimage, and the parents' family do not in any way help in the development of the justification of the main story. A consistent theme that should be spread out to, uh, to be spread throughout the novel is non-existent. Consequently, the question of the reader's curiosity being maintained throughout with the creation does not arise. The nature of most of the incidents too is the same, and they are either related to theft or fraud. From the point of view of characterization, too, the work is unimpressive. The title itself is suggestive of the work containing only one chief character, and the other characters seem dwarfed in her comparison. The writers only presented a revelation of ready-made characters and not made any contribution to the growth. Bhagavati's character, indifferent to the situation, always remains steadfast and is not dynamic. She is the spotless moon, endowed with rich qualities and free from all defects and weaknesses. Evaluating the character Bhagyavati, शिवनारायण श्रीवास्तव states, I quote, भाग्यवती को सर्वगुण संपन्न बनाने के प्रयत्न में लेखक ने कहीं मानवीय सीमाओं का ध्यान नहीं रखा है. Unquote. The consequences of Bhagavati's dominance is that the other characters of the work have become puppets, dancing to the fancy of the writer. The depiction of the contemporary milieu adds to the authenticity of the physical work. Apart from the social reforms related to women, the praise of the British rule, the prevalent corruption, and the Western influence, among others, provide the readers with a perception of the transition taking place in society. The transitional milieu is not directly portrayed, but is suggested through the discussions taking place among the characters. The work justifies its objective of social reformation and is presented in an intelligible manner. Such kind of presentation is of historical significance. Next. Coincidentally, it does not contain some seeds of the novel form, but these seeds could not sprout and assume the form of a novel. With the consequence, the work has achieved a mixed form of the moral tales in Sanskrit and the contemporary epic. It can thus be termed as a perceived narrative. Bhagavati presents a shift in Hindi prose as compared to the earlier work Rani Ketki Ki Kahani. In spite of being an underdeveloped novel, Bhagavati does not Bhagavati contributes to Hindi literature as being a complete prose work. The language had acquired stability and a definite shape by the zealous efforts of Bhartendu Harishchandra and Nagari Pracharini Sabha. The age too was witnessing religious, social, and political upheavals. For the first time, the prevalent Sanatan Dharma faced challenge from the social reformation organizations that had become active under the influence of the Indian Renaissance. Thus, Bhagavati is a work influenced by the contemporary social reform. Apart from spreading the message of social reformation, the work is a significant specimen of transition of Indian society from a narrow, rigid outlook to a broad, progressive, and reformist attitude. Though the work lacks an appropriate plot and relevant subplots, the progress of Hindi prose from Rani Ketki Ki Kahani to Bhagyavati is quite evident. From the dominance of prose, the shift is to complete prose. Hindi as a language had acquired stability and a definite form appropriate for literary expression. Thematically too, a great leap is observed from romance to social reformation. The work is primarily didactic and having a reformist approach. Though Bhagavati is the second work that comes to light after a long gap of around 77 years, and its importance is not from perspective of language, but from delineating the changes necessitated by the influence of the Indian Renaissance. Thus, the novel is historically significant. Next, Pariksha Guru 1882 is the first novel of the English kind to appear in Hindi. Lala Srinivas Das, the author of Pariksha Guru, belonging to the Bhartendu circle, is credited by the majority of the critics with being the first original novel in Hindi. Associated with the middle class life, the novelist terms the work in the Nivedan as, I quote, worldly story providing didacticism from experience, unquote. It is quite obvious from the worldly story that the novelist has based his work on the ground of realism that is distinct from the stories of the fairies, princesses, animal, birds, and divine narratives. Lalaji has also termed it as a novel, suggesting that he wanted to write a novel based on the style of English novel. The principal theme of the novel is to prove the trial as the guru, and the novelist at several places clarifies that selfish and treacherous friends would desert Madan Mohan, the chief protagonist, during distress. Only the trial during adversity would differentiate the genuine from the fair weather friends. Through this theme, the novelist has not only skillfully provided a broad picture of a contemporary national value, but has also woven it with a with a specific objective. The plot of the novel is regarding the reformation of an assumed nobleman of Delhi, misguided by falling into wrong company. Through this medium, the novelist evaluates the vivid incidents of life into a weak aphorism. The narrative is very scattered because of the several chapters being unrelated to the main plot. The novelist has included several historical and didactic stories for proving his point, consequently creating chaos in the novel. On one hand, this quality of being scattered signifies the fault regarding the organization, while on the other hand, also demarcates the possibility of the future novel. The novelist resorts to the flashback technique in emphasizing the difference of ideology and values between the generation of Madan Mohan and his father. The use of the flashback technique by the novelist in the beginning of the plot indicates a revolution in the narrative technique of the Hindi novel. The distinct characteristic of Praksha Guru is that for the first time it represents the realistic issues of life. Neither does it contain a love story of the traditional kind nor some amazing incidents. The, the presentation of the contemporary middle class and its various members is its prime objective. The words of the novelist in the Nivedan themselves reveal that the treatment of this prose is to set a new precedent in the history of Hindi literature. The novelist states, I quote, अब तक नागरी और उर्दू भाषा में अनेक अच्छी अच्छी पुस्तकें तैयार हो चुकी हैं, परंतु मेरी जान से इस रीति से कोई नहीं लिखी गई, इसलिए अपनी भाषा में यह नई चाल की पुस्तक होगी, unquote. Differing from the contemporary prose, the novelist, in the exposition of the work itself, reveals the traits of the novel. The prose work of the pre-Premchand age, similar to Udayban Charit, या रानी केतकी की कहानी, and Bhagavati, begin with providing a lengthy introduction of the characters and presenting the incidents right from the birth of the protagonists and providing comprehensive details of the family background. But no such information is provided in the work, and the mysteries too are revealed at an appropriate time and place. This task is dexterously handled by the novelist, and he succeeds in raising the curiosity of the reader. The novelist does not reveal the traits of the principal character Braj Kishore up to 168th page of the novel. The craft-conscious novelist thought it necessary to clarify in the Nivedan the difference between the novel and the drama. The essential fact is that the novelist is conscious of the artistic style of the novel, which he may have adopted from the English novel. The awareness of artistic novelty too provides Pariksha Guru to be the first novel of the English type in Hindi. Though Pariksha Guru is credited with being the first novel in Hindi, it does contain some traces of drama and narrative. The maxims, idiomatic phrases, and soliloquies of Braj Kishore serve as illustration of the influence of the past on the new emerging literary form. Next, the efforts of the novelist of appropriate character portrayal reveal his awareness regarding characterization. The positioning of the characters according to their importance too is suggestive of the novelist's skill of characterization. Madan Mohan is the protagonist and the center of the action in the novel. Raj Kishore makes special efforts of reforming Madan Mohan, and his endeavors ultimately bear fruits. Thus, his position is next to protagonist. The female characters do not find any significant place in the novel, with the exception of a minor role of Madan Mohan's wife. All the characters of the novel represent a specific class. Pariksha Guru exhibits all the major characteristics of the Hindi type novel. I'm sorry, characteristics of the English type novel. The novelist too depicts awareness of his work being different from the drama and the narrative tradition. His knowledge of plot and narration is evident from his statements made in the Nivedan itself. He remarks, I quote, पहले तो पढ़ने वाले इस पुस्तक में सौदागर की दुकान का हाल पढ़ते ही चकरावेंगे, क्योंकि अपनी भाषा में अब तक वार्ता रूपी जो पुस्तकें लिखी गई हैं, उनमें अक्सर नायक नायिका वगैरह का हाल हिट से सिलसिलेवार लिखा गया है, जैसे कोई राजा, बादशाह, सेठ, साहूकार का लड़का था, उसके मन में इस बात से यह रुचि हुई और उसका ये परिणाम निकला। ऐसा सिलसिला कुछ भी नहीं मालूम होता है। लाला मदन मोहन एक अंग्रेजी सौदागर की दुकान में असबाब देख रहे हैं। लाला ब्रजकिशोर, मुंशी चुनीलाल और मास्टर शिबू दयाल उनके साथ हैं। इनमें मदन मोहन कौन, ब्रजकिशोर कौन, चुनीलाल कौन और शिबू दयाल कौन है, इनका स्वभाव कैसा है, यह बातें पहले से कुछ भी नहीं जताई गई है। पढ़ने वाले धैर्य से सब पुस्तक पढ़ लेंगे तो अपने अपने मौके पर सब भेद खुलता चला जाएगा और आदि से अंत तक सब मेल मिल जाएगा। परंतु इतना धैर्य न रखेंगे वह इसका मतलब भी नहीं समझ सकेंगे। Unquote. The characters of this work are neither the aristocrats nor royalty, but belong to the contemporary middle class. The first novel in Hindi keeps the middle class in the center stage, the class that plays a critical role in the transition of society. The earlier novelists of the earlier novelists of this age lacked a modern outlook and the necessary knowledge of the novel form. They also lacked the capability of serious critical inquiry. Pariksha Guru is also the first work in Hindi literature depicting resistance to discriminatory economic policies of the British rule. Rajkishore's views regarding loss to the Indian economy by the Indians purchasing costly artifacts from the British depicts the economic awareness that is later observed in full bloom only in the works of Premchand. The resistance is missing in the earlier works of Bhagirathi and Rani Ketki ki Kahani. Bhagirathi rather depicts the praise of the social welfare measures of the British in India and nowhere shows any signs of discontent against the discriminatory economic policies of the British. It is probable that at the back of the mind, the novelist is juxtaposing the social welfare measures during the feudal rule that existed prior to the establishing of the British rule. In spite of all its incompleteness and deficiencies, Pariksha Guru for the first time depicts in Hindi the organization of elements of the novel and application of the novel craft at a time when most of the writers were staunch followers of Sanatan Dharma. Lala Srinivas Das, dealing with the economic and industrial issues with the view of progress and prosperity of a nation, in itself speaks volumes of the intellect and the foresight of the 19th century novelist. The influence of the Indian Renaissance is clearly visible in the works of Bhartendu Harishchandra (1850 to 1885). In this essay, भारतवर्ष भारतवर्षोन्नति कैसे हो सकती है, Bhartendu remarks, I quote, Hindu brothers, you too should give up your internal difference, love each other, follow the principle, whoever lives in Hindustan, whatever be his or her color, caste, is a Hindu, help Hindus, all Bengalis, Marathis, Punjabis, Madrasis, Vedics, Jain, Brahmins, and Muslims hold each other's hands. I'm quoting. Belonging to the Bhartendu group known as the Bhartendu Mandal, Lala Srinivas Das, as a writer, just like Bhartendu, raised in his dramas his voice against the social problems of his age. The novelist in Pariksha Guru expresses a desire to modernize the nation with the new means of agriculture and through industrial progress. It insists on not blindly emulating the British, emphasizes on the traditional education, and condemns fashion and extravagance. Bhartendu and his compatriots like Lala Srinivas were trying to free themselves from the influence of the Britishers through their writings. Thus, the efforts of Lalaji in attempting a holistic presentation of the contemporary age are worth commending. Premchand's idealistic realism is in fact begins from here itself. Pariksha Guru being considered the first English type novel in Hindi suggests that the Hindi novel begins with the social realism as its identity. This journey of social realism as its identity is carried forward by Premchand and Yashpal among others to the present times and has become capable of acquiring diverse dimensions. If Pariksha Guru is the first novel in Hindi of the English type, then very soon appeared Thakur Jagmohan Singh's Sham Sapna in 1888, an Indian novel in Hindi, as it is a convergence of Ritikal and the modern prose. This dual quality of prose as well as verse provides it a distinct position in Hindi novels. The author on its cover page claims it to be, I quote, prose dominated imagination in four segments, unquote, and in English claims it to be, I quote, novel, unquote. Supporting Ambika Dutt's views of the works being a prosaic verse, Sri Krishna Lal in the Bhumika observes, I quote, शाम सपना सच्चे अर्थ में गद्य काव्य है, इसमें गद्य और पद्य दोनों में ही काव्य की सृष्टि हुई है, परंतु ये गद्य प्रधान है, अनकोट. Nambar Singh, in the novel of English type and Indian novel, suggests that not all Indian novelists subscribed to the colonial model of English novel. Certain novels resisted the model of the English type novel as he exposes the two faces of colonialism. Thus, he appreciates the efforts of novelists like Bankim Chandra, Fakir Mohan Senapati, and Hazari Prasad Dwivedi, who rejects the realistic English novel in favor of romances like Kapal Kundala by Durgesh Nandani, Anand Mat, and Shama Sapna of the 19th century, which were the foundation stones of the Indian novel, not works like Pariksha Guru by Lala Srinivas Das. Avdesh Kumar Singh, in Towards the Theory of Indian Novel remarks, I quote, in rejection of the English type novel, Nambar Singh saw the rejection of colonialism, unquote. Though Thakur Jagmohan Singh cannot be included into the category of the English type modern novelist, but Shama Sapna definitely contributes to the enrichment of the contemporary Hindi prose. Next. With all the works published up to Sham Sapna, none achieved popularity that reached a wide section of society. It was only the publication of Devakinandan Khatri's Chandrakanta, 1891, which created a sensation unprecedented in the realm of Hindi novel. Basically, Chandrakanta and Chandrakanta Sanskriti are incident-dominated works. The novelist doesn't pay much attention to characters. It, it presents persons and not characters that can be given any name. Thus, it is difficult to differentiate one character from another. All their actions are removed from reality and are imaginary. The characters here are created to suit the requirements of the incidents and not vice versa. In fact, this is character narration of ready-made construction of characters, but not characterization. The characters are static and go through no change or transformation from the beginning of the work to its end. They lack individuality or any trait that can term them as ground characters. According to the will of the creator, they exhibit the evil and virtuous qualities and are either entirely evil or entirely virtuous. The nature of the conduct of the characters is even not with an objective of providing entertainment to the readers. This objective is fulfilled by the strange incident of Tillism and Ayari. Tillism and Ayari is magic and deception. In spite of the characterization of the novel being its drawback, the novel succeeds in achieving popularity among the readers. Analyzing the reason of the popularity of these flat characters among the readers, नंद दुलारे वाजपेयी comments, I quote, नायक और नायिकाएं यद्यपि राजकीय वर्गों से ली गई हैं, परंतु उनका चरित्र निर्माण प्रेम और वीरता के स्वच्छंद प्रसंगों को लेकर ही हुआ है, जिसमें उनमें जन साधारण के लिए भी आकर्षण आ गया है. Unquote. The popularity of the work can be gauged by the publishing of around 45 editions of Chandrakanta Santati between 1891 and 1963 AD. Thus, Chandrakanta and Chandrakanta Santati mark a paradigm shift from the earlier didactic and socially reformative works such as Bhagavati and Pariksha Guru. With them picks up the trend of depicting amazing incidents and of providing entertainment. Had other writers upheld this tradition, then the art of depiction of social realism would have matured prior to the arrival of Premchand. Premchand did not consider everything written as literature. In his collection of essays, Kuch Vichar, he categorically states, I quote, परंतु मेरा अभिप्राय यह नहीं है कि जो कुछ लिख दिया जाए वह सब का सब साहित्य है. साहित्य उसी रचना को कहेंगे जिसमें कोई सच्ची जिसमें कोई सच्चाई प्रकट की गई हो, जिसकी भाषा प्रौढ़, परिमार्जित और सुंदर है और जिसमें दिल और दिमाग पर असर डालने का गुण हो, और साहित्य में ये गुण पूर्ण रूप से उसी अवस्था में उत्पन्न होते हैं जब उसमें जीवन की सच्चाई और अनुभूतियां व्यक्त की गई हो. तिलिस्मती कहानियां, भूत प्रेत की कथाओं और प्रेम वियोग की आख्यानों से किसी जमाने में हम भले ही प्रभावित हुए हों, पर अब उनमें हमारे लिए बहुत कम दिलचस्पी है. Unquote. Further, Premchand believes the criticism of life to be the most appropriate definition of literature. He elaborates in कुछ विचार, I quote, चाहे वह निबंध के रूप में हो, चाहे कहानियों के या काव्य के, उसे हमारे जीवन की आलोचना और व्याख्या करनी चाहिए. Unquote. On the basis, on this basis, rejecting Chandrakanta and Chandrakanta Santati to be the literary works, प्रेमचंद एवर्स, आई कोट, हमने जिस युग को अभी पार किया है उसे जीवन से कोई मतलब न था. हमारे साहित्यकार कल्पना की सृष्टि खड़ी कर उसमें मनमाने तिलिस बांधा करते थे. कहीं किसानाए अजायब की दास्तान थी, कहीं बोस्ताने ख्याल की और कहीं चंद्रकांता संतति की. इन आख्यानों का उद्देश्य केवल मनोरंजन था और हमारे अद्भुत रस प्रेम की तृप्ति. साहित्य का जीवन से कोई लगाव है, ये कल्पनातीत था. कहानी कहानी है, जीवन जीवन, दोनों परस्पर विरोधी वस्तुएं समझी जाती थी. Unquote. Among the writers during this period, only Pariksha Guru fits best into the category of the novel of the English kind, wherein the writer shows awareness of the structure, plot, and characterization of the novel, as well as its difference from the drama and the legendary narratives. Majority of the critics accepting it as the first novel in Hindi comes as no surprise. Next, Hindi novel in the age of Premchand. The Hindi novel was in a state of evolution in the 19th century. Before Premchand, it revolved around magical or tales of deception, entertaining stories, and religious themes. Thus, the Hindi novelist before Premchand could not fulfill the precise purpose of the novel, as they were either only didactic or only entertaining, lacking the didactic element. They failed to blend both of them satisfactorily and even could not benefit from the development of the novel in the West. Premchand for the first time understands the form and the purpose of the novel and blends idealism and realism with the Indian themes, issues and worldviews in the Western form. He not only enriches it by his valuable contribution but also provides the literary form a specific direction and growth. Thus, Premchand is considered one of the most revered figures in the field of Hindi novel and progressive movement. The demarcation of the Hindi novel as pre-Premchand age and Premchand age is not only chronologically based, but is based on these distinct literary characteristics. Similarly, Premchand age and post-Premchand age too represent two distinct streams of literature. Thus, Premchand, placed between his preceding and succeeding age, seems to signify specific standards for Hindi literature. The Hindi novels that witnessed a sea change after the arrival of Premchand had access to Tulism Ayari and the detective novels. Historical romances too were no different. Socially educative novels and works of social reformation such as Bhagavati or Adarsh Hindu, having tilt towards Sanatan Dharma, were available. These works either espoused or opposed the Pada system, the unconditional fidelity of a wife to her husband, co-education, and child marriage according to their social affiliation. Premchand intervenes at this place and provides the direction of realism to the Hindi novel by salvaging it from confusing and reactionary conditions and emphasizing on the issues faced by our nation and society. He is the flag bearer of this new literary consciousness. With his comprehensive, with his comprehensive reading of Western literary works of Dickens, Henry James, Lord Chesterton, among others, Premchand arrives at a definite literary conclusion and sets a blueprint for the Hindi novel. With a specific view regarding novel, he rejects the earlier Tilism and Ayari works as unfit for his age, as they focused on romance and were escapist in nature. Premchand believed that the objective of poetry and literature is to further intensify our perceptions, but human life is not limited to the love of a opposite sex. In his essay, साहित्य का उद्देश्य कुछ विचार, he questions that, I quote, can the literature that considers it important only to escape from the harsh realities of life fulfill our requirements concerning ideology and expression? Unquote. Premchand perceives the change of the literary taste among the contemporary readers and appreciates their tilt towards realism. Elaborating on this change in literary taste, he remarks, I quote, परंतु हमारी साहित्यिक रुचि बड़ी तेजी से बदल रही है। अब साहित्य केवल मन बहलाव की चीज नहीं है, मनोरंजन के सिवा उसका और भी उद्देश्य है। अब वह केवल नायक नायिका के संयोग वियोग की कहानी नहीं सुनता, किंतु जीवन की समस्याओं पर भी विचार करता है और उन्हें हल करता है। अब वह स्फूर्ति या प्रेरणा के लिए अद्भुत आश्चर्यजनक घटनाएं नहीं ढूंढता और न अनुप्रास का अन्वेषण करता है, किंतु उसे उन प्रश्नों से दिलचस्पी है जिसमें समाज या व्यक्ति प्रभावित होते हैं। Unquote. Prior to the age of Premchand, The change in literary taste from escapism to realism goes even beyond the incidents of magic and deception, such as depicted in Chandrakanta Sanskriti. It even finds its influence in the characters and their authenticity. He believed that the activity of the presentation of real state of affairs in modern literature is so much on the rise that the contemporary story does not cross the limit of the probable direct experience. Thus, the resemblance of human beings from the psychological point of view too does not content the readers, and unless the author has provided us an authentic biographical delineation, they are not influenced by the actions and views of the imaginary characters, as they do not have faith in the people created by imagination. The readers should be assured that the creation of the writer is based on direct experience, and it is the language of the common man that characters speak. Premchand changes the concept of the novel that existed prior to his age. Redefining novel and its functions, he observes, मैं उपन्यास को मानव चरित्र का चित्र समझता हूँ. मानव चरित्र पर प्रकाश डालना और उसके रहस्य को खोलना ही उपन्यास का मूल तत्व है. उसी भांति सब आदमियों के चरित्रों में भी बहुत कुछ समानता होते हुए कुछ विभिन्नताएं होते हैं. यही चरित्र संबंधी समानता और विभिन्नता, अभिन्नता में भिन्नता और विभिन्नता में अभिन्नता दिखाना उपन्यास का मुख्य कर्तव्य है. Unquote. The principal contribution of Premchand to the Hindi novel is idealistic realism. He divides his contemporary writers into two groups of realists and idealists. According to Premchand, realistic novels try to present characters realistically as they are. They are not concerned if the consequences of worthy and unworthy conduct are good or bad. Their characters end their given roles by showing their merits and demerits as they are. Since in the real world, the result of good and bad is not always good or bad, and is often opposite, so good people suffer and are often insulted. Their goodness breeds opposite results, whereas villainous humans prosper, become popular, and renowned. Their evil acts bring about opposite results. This is a strange rule of nature. The realist is fastened to the fetters of experience. The world is full of evil characters, and the characters of every very good people have some or the other stains on them. So realism is the naked portrait of our weaknesses, contradictions, and cruelties. Next, Premchand combines idealism and realism and coins a new term, idealistic realism, that is Adarshonmukh Yatharthwad in Hindi. All his works, except Nirmala and Godan, present idealistic realism kind of works. He avers, I quote, इसलिए वही उपन्यास उच्च कोटि की समझे जाते हैं जहाँ यथार्थ और आदर्श का समावेश हो, उसे आप आदर्शोन्मुख यथार्थवाद कह सकते हैं. आदर्श को सजीव बनाने के लिए भी यथार्थ का उपयोग होना चाहिए और अच्छे उपन्यास की यही विशेषता है. अनकोट. नेक्स्ट, प्रेमचंद condemns, Premchand considers characterization too to be very important and has specific views regarding it. According to him, the greatest quality the greatest quality of a novelist is the creation of such characters as would enchant their readers with their noble behavior and thoughts. The novel bereft of this attitude is worthless. It is not necessary that characters should be free from blemishes to sublimate or to idealize characters. Even the great men can have some weaknesses, and there is no harm in portraying their weaknesses in order to enrich their character. These weaknesses make the character a human being. A character free from all weaknesses would become a god, and we would fail to associate ourselves with him or to understand him. Focusing on characterization, Premchand opposes, I'm sorry, Premchand proposes that characters should have a positive influence on the readers. The job of a literary writer is not to amuse the readers. This is the job of the bards, jugglers, jesters, and jokers. The seat of literature is much higher than this. It acts as a guide, and thereby it awakens our humanness. It is a transmitter of virtuous disposition in us and widens our perception. In fact, only this should be his objective. Premchand considers characterization to be very important and has specific views regarding it. Even the great man can have some weaknesses, and there is no harm in portraying their weaknesses in others in order to enrich their characters. These weaknesses make that character a human being. A character free from all weaknesses would become a god, and we would fail to understand him. If any character remains the same in the end of the novel as he or she was in the beginning, no growth of its strength, intelligence, and emotions takes place, then it is an unsuccessful character. The new spirit of realism in literature lent a powerful stimulus to the creativity of the writers of fiction. The age demanded that one of the chief factors of interest in any fictitious image of life should, should be its resemblance to truth. Premchand and other eminent writers of the age imbibed realism as an important element in their work. Thus, the objective of art in this age is the study and the depiction of reality. Next, Evasaram 1918 is the first principal novel by Premchand in which the novelist has raised the issues concerning women in the Indian society, along with several other associated social issues such as the custom of dowry, mismatched marriage, and prostitution. His basic preoccupation has been the reformation and rehabilitation of the prostitutes in society. The novel very well fits into the definition of idealistic realism provided by the novelist. The concerned issues are presented realistically and an idealistic solution to is attempted. Though the first work of the though it is the first work of the novelist, it is as a form superior to most of the other later works. Besides Sevasadan, Premchand's Nirmala (1927) is another women-centric novel. The principal concern of Premchand in Nirmala is the state of the Indian women living an accursed life since centuries within the male-dominated societal structure. As such, Premchand has depicted the tragic reality of the lives of the women in their earlier works such as Pratigna, Ardhan, and Sivasaram. But such a tragic and realistic presentation is not found in his earlier novels. The novel highlights several social issues such as the evils of dowry system, mismatched marriage, suppressed sexuality, and the subsequent disintegration of the family structure. At a deeper level, Premchand is not just narrating a tragic story of a woman, but through this medium, he is raising some strong and basic issues and also addresses us with some new questions that had earlier not been presented in this manner by anyone else. The issue of love and sex has come to light in Nirmala in a very concrete social and psychological context. Being punished by mismatched marriage, Nirmala lives a life of unexpressed love and suffocation. Her love and her contemporary older son acquires a compassionate form. Traditional morality is very much emphasized in a closed and rigid society. Consequently, the entire society historically becomes a canal of tragedy. Thus, it is clear that whenever Premchand raises any issue of the tradition of dowry, failure of love, mismatched marriage, or widow remarriage, he is simultaneously in search of a new sexual morality and economics. The Indian society presently, as it is rigid, is even today very concealing regarding sex. The proportion of sexual suppression and sexual exploitation too is vastly present. The traditional orthodox marriage system too leads to sexual suppression or exploitation. Thus, Premchand has raised marriage as the chief Indian issue because in it the relation of the economic and sexual crisis is more evidently visible. The novel Nirmala suggests the fact that balance cannot be achieved in society without eradicating economic suffering and freedom from economic slavery. Diagnosis of social issues is difficult without setting in order the economic issues. The novel also exposes the feudal structure of the Indian families, wherein the man, whether father, husband, or head of the family, is a virtual dictator. He is the controller of the future of the and the fate of his wife and children. Nirmala and Mansaram have to give in to the wishes of Munshi Totara. Thus, not only women, but the male children in the feudal structure are also exploited at the hands of the head of the family. Ramvila Sharma observes, I quote, इस जर्जर सामंती समाज में स्त्रियों की तरह लड़के को भी स्वाधीनता नहीं है। ये तथ्य सबसे पहले प्रेमचंद ने पेश किया। मनसाराम अपनी विमाता का गुलाम नहीं है, तो गुलाम जैसा सलूक पाता है अपने पिता से। तोताराम के लड़के चोरी बदमाशी सीखने की आज़ादी हासिल कर लेते हैं, लेकिन मंसाराम के सहज विकास और उसकी स्वाभाविक इच्छाओं से पिता का स्वार्थ टकराता है। वहाँ लड़के को दबना पड़ता है। पिता उसे उसी तरह अपनी संपत्ति समझता है जैसे स्त्री को। Unquote. This fact was first presented by Premchand. Mansaram is not a slave to his stepmother, but receives treatment fit for a slave from his father. Nirmala, one of the most realistic works in Hindi fiction, depicts the growth from the earlier works of Premchand as well as the other contemporary writers. Accomplished in matters regarding the plot, characterization, and the theme, the novel studies the contemporary issues from the socio-economic cultural perspective, which provides unprecedented dynamism to the novel. Next. Premchand, the pioneer of progressive writing in Hindi, studied social issues like a sociologist and presented them as an artist, arousing noble emotions of love, kindness, charity, and pity among others. His Godan, 1936, his last complete novel, is considered his best work. It is the most realistic interpretation of Indian village society, the backbone of India. It is a story of changing people, hungry and semi-starved, yet hopeful and optimistic. In the truest spirit of the age it represents. Godal, for the first time in Hindi literature, realistically depicts the shift of power taking place in the Indian society, the feudal structure crumbling and the capitalism taking over. It suggests that the change of the society from the feudalistic to capitalistic did not change anything else for the poor, exploited farmers, farm laborers, or the laborers working in the industries. The exploiters changed, but the fate of the exploiters remained the same. I'm sorry, the exploiters changed, but the fate of the exploited remained the same. Ideologically, too, the novel depicts the triumph of the Indian traditional culture over the West through, through the transformation of Dr. Malti from Madame Malti to Malti Devi. The novel also rejects feminism and suggests keeping it at bay from the Indian society. Dealing with such diverse perspectives justifies the novel with the critical acclaim due to a masterpiece. Thus, Namba Singh remarks, I quote, साहित्य के रूप में गोदान तमाम उपन्यासों के बीच क्या स्थान रखता है और क्या महत्वपूर्ण है, बावजूद इसके हिंदी में उसके बाद ज्ञानेंद्र के उपन्यास है, महिला आंचल है, नौकर की कमीज है, राग दरबारी, आधा गांव है, उपन्यास की इस लंबी परंपरा में गोदान क्यों आज भी अपराजीय है, कोई उसकी गहराई और विस्तार के साथ भी उसकी मार्मिकता को नहीं व्यक्त कर सकता है, अनकोट. As a novelist, Premchand has dealt with the various issues such as caste structure, communalism, prevailing economic inequality, and how the rich and the upper caste, for their vested interests, make efforts to perpetuate the inequality. Thus, he brings the age live to the readers with its evils, strengths, weaknesses, and challenges. The novelist's journey from Sevasadan to Godan depicts the several issues and conditions that plagued the pre-independence Indian society. From the minutest incident of the family to the significant social and national issues find place in his works. His sharp observation analyzed the nation and the society from various perspectives and also attempted to understand the ambiguous human nature. Next. The years from 1915 to 1936 are to such a great extent dominated by Premchand that other writers seem dwarfed in his comparison. But it would be wrong not to credit the other writers who, for their contribution to Hindi literature, unlike Vikharani, dealing with a love story, published in the same year is Jaishankar Prasad's Kankal, dealing with serious social issues of hypocrisy of the established institutions of society. Jaishankar Prasad's novel Kankal (1929) exposes the hypocrisy and the double standards of the Indian society. Kankal depicts a contemporary particular class from a particular perspective. Human beings in the course of the growth of the civilization have established certain religious and ethical values. The basic purpose of these values is collective welfare. But the over-insistence over these values leads to neglect of the individual and suppression of the basic rights. Kankal is a story very subtly depicting the conflict between the social taboos and the individual's natural instinct. Though we find a couple of other good novelists during this age, such as Vishwambarna Sharma's Vikharani and Jaishankar Prasad, it is Premchand who is the forerunner of this age. The success of Premchand can be attributed to his fidelity to life of common people like peasants and workers, interesting narrative style, simple language, and the avoidance of highly Sanskritized words, as was the trend among other writers, and the use of a dialect of common folk. Premchand deals with issues ranging from corruption, the rights of the peasants, communalism, zamindari, and colonialism, bringing the Hindi novel out from the flights of magical events, of deception and detective fantasy. These works move, edify, and instruct the reader. They have a psychological and moral substance, a kind of social realism that adds greatly to their values as realistic studies of character and society. Thus, Premchand stands true to his own words. A writer by his nature is progressive or he cannot be a writer. Next. The, the years after Premchand were marked by radical changes in the forms of Second World War, the scientific inventions, awakening and freedom of the colonized nations, with the significant astronomical achievements, among others. These developments questioned the fundamental values and led to revolutionary changes in humanitarian values, lifestyle, and ideology. In India, the youth recruited for war fought by the British, the Indian struggle for independence, the 1942 Quit India movement, and the suppression of the freedom struggle by the colonizers, the establishment of the Indian National Army by Subhash Chandra Bose, unprecedented price rise, the famine of Bengal, and the communal riots leading to the partition of the subcontinent, and the consequent independence were some of the important developments from which no sphere of life could remain unaffected. Thus, the influence of these developments taking place in Indian society had a profound impact on the literature of this age. With the shift from writing to psychological and psychoanalytical, the modern novel took up individual experience as its basis. The internal conflicts depicted in the form of stream of consciousness and its influence on our actions and conduct are the focus of the writers. The psychological complexes and prejudices, the suppressed desires, their finding place in the subconscious, and their influence on the personality and behavior of the characters is of interest to the writers of this age. The Hindi novel writing witnesses a shift from the presentation of the external world and its conflicts to the psychoanalysis and stream of consciousness that is pioneered by Janendra Jagpatra in 1937 is one of his key works. Next. The characteristics in the works of Gyanendra is not natural as he presents only the bare minimum sketches to his characters, and yet they are unforgettable for their conviction, depth, and density of presentation. They are individuals, seem unreal, and are created to carry out the Gandhian philosophy in a Gyanendran way. They move from the superficial to the subtle levels and bring into focus aspects of man which we normally do not see. His works do not suffer from abundance of characters, nor do they have much use of intricate network of events and episodes. They are essentially character-oriented, and the female and revolutionary characters are only as supporting figures of the story and are never in the main role. The intricacies of man-woman relationships, their interactions, their mutual interactions and repulsions represent a special feature of his fictional world. Another distinct characteristic is the comprehensiveness of the writing. While Premchand novels are detailed and comprehensive in depicting the contemporary society and its concerns, Janendra's writings are precise and dealing not with the entire gamut of issues of the age, but only the ones that affect the psyche. Thus, a clear and subtle growth is observed in the Hindi novels with the change of age from Premchand to the post-Premchand age. With the introduction and increase of psychological and psychoanalytical knowledge and an upsurge of individuality in society, the writing too reflects these characteristics. Next, now Indian English novel. Indian English novel too can be bifurcated just as the Hindi novel uh, uh, into the beginning, the early writers, and then we have the triumvirate who make a vast difference in the novel writing. The Indian English was transplanted into India because East India Company, soon after establishing their rule in India, began to feel a communication gap between the British rulers and the natives. In order to solve the communication problem, which was a major hindrance in an alien world, consequently Charles Grant, one of the directors of East India Company, pleaded for the adoption of the English language in 1792. Later on, after a gap of 43 years, the English language was adopted in 1835 by a brief resolution of the Governor General in Council for the promotion of the European literature and science among the natives of India. India witnessed the beginning of a new era with the announcement of Lord William Bentinck to impart the Indians the knowledge of English literature and science through the medium of English. In the mid-19th century, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who had initiated social reform programs and in the process favored the English language for spreading the wealth of information and culture available in British publications. Roy, a master of Sanskrit, Persian and the Arabic language, felt that all Renaissance knowledge was compiled mainly in the European languages. India had a rich potential for the narrative traditions from India had a rich potential for the narrative tradition form than the West because of the Indian gift for storytelling which goes back to the Rigveda and the Upanishads. The 32 stories of the throne relating to the king Vikramaditya and Somudev's Kathasarit Sagar are perhaps the most popular in Sanskrit as well as regional languages. What is striking is that so much of contemporary social reality goes into this story. Thus, the modern Indian writers is and have to a rich cultural past merging into the corridors of time. M.K. Naik, about the modern Indian English writer, states, I quote, he is a tree with its roots nurtured in the Indian soil and its branches opening out to breathe the winds that blow from a western sky. Unquote. The novel of Indian writing in English becomes conspicuous in the second half of the 19th century. Next. The claimants for the first Indian novel in English are Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's Rajmohan's Wife, 1864, and Lal Bihari De's Govind Samant, 1876. Rajlakshmi Devi's The Hindu, Wife, 1876, Toru Dutt's Bianca, 1878, Kali Krishna Lahari's Roshinara, 1881, and H. Dutt's Bijoy 1888. Regarding these works, K. R. Srinivas Iyengar remarks, I quote, these novels, written in English, have for us today no more than an antiquarian or historical interest. Unquote. Next. Lal Bihari De's Govind Samant is the first important Indian novel to appear in English. The original edition of Govind Samant bore the title Govind Samant or The History of a Bengal Rayat, while the edition of 1988, published by Macmillan, London, has the entitled Bengal Peasant's Life. The scene of the novel is Gurdwan district during 1850 to 75, and the author, in his prefatory note, makes direct statements on what the reader should and should not expect in this work. For example, he should expect here, I quote, a plain and unvarnished tale of a plain peasant living in this plain country of Bengal, unquote. The environment depicted is essentially Indian, and the author of the first work of Indian fiction was keenly sensitive to the issues of the condition of the Rayat raised in the work. Govind Samant is a good beginning for the Indian novel in English, as the writer deliberately attempts to make the readers believe that whatever they are reading is a true account and not a fictitious one, and thus bringing the work close to life. Though Govind Samant may not satisfy many of the demands of the novel in the strict sense of the term, its claims to the title are by no means poor. Apart from the fact that in appearance marked the birth of a new type of narrative prose fiction in India, it also depicted with studious preciseness the manner and tone of actual biography. Next, the emergence of women writers during this period is of great significance in the sense that it marks the birth of an era which promises a new deal for the Indian woman. Writers such as Toru Dutt, Mrs. Ghosal, Saurabhi Cornelia, and Krupabai Sakinathan fulfill the task of the emancipation of the Indian women from the tyranny of the ages and from the ages and from the age-old cruel custom. Next, Toru Dutt earned critical attention as a significant writer. Besides being an eminent poet, Toru Dutt, 1856 to 1877, has two novels to her credit in French and Bianca or the Young Spanish Maiden in English, published posthumously. Bianca or the Young Spanish Maiden, a romance consisting of 8 chapters, is believed to be a self-portrayal and was written during the years 1875 to 76 when Toru fell ill and was on her deathbed, and that proving to have triumphed over life. Thus the marvelous piece of work remained incomplete. The incompleteness and fragmentary nature of the novel is a serious handicap in forming any precise opinion regarding it. From the available portion, it can only be concluded that Bianca going into a sudden fit of delirium and recovering all too suddenly is rather unrealistic, typical of the Victorian novelist. Toru sensibility, her attitude to feminine beauty and grace, though apparently English, is essentially Indian. Next, Krupabai Sathyanathan, 1862 to 1894, had chosen medical field as a career, but had to give it up midway because of her failing health. It was after her death that her two stories were published in the form of a book under the titles of Kamla, A Story of Hindu Life, 1894, and Saguna, A Story of Native Christian Life, 1895. Both these novels tell us only the story of a life as in its different phases except that the names are fictional. Next, the story is of the earlier life of a life in Bombay and gives a vivid picture of her own home, which had originally been a Brahmin home for her parents were Brahmins who were later converted to Christianity. Next. 70 by Nikambe's Ratnabai, 1895, is with an objective of strengthening her cause and spreading awareness regarding the rights of the weaker sex. A social worker dedicated to the betterment of the weaker sex against tyranny and exploitation prevalent in the society during the time. Ratnabai is more a propaganda story than fiction, but its appearance was significant since its since it voiced and espoused the cause of the women's education and the emancipation of the Indian women. Next, though the contribution of Swarna Kumari Ghosal, 1855 to 1932, is not immense, whatever she produced bears on it the stamp of good writing in English. She has three novels to her credit. They are The Fractal Garland, An Unfinished Song, and An Indian Love Story. The Fatal Garland is a historical romance set against the background of the 15th century Bengal. Its theme is the rivalry in love between the two beautiful and spirited young girls. The Fatal Garland can be appropriately termed as historical romance rather than a historical novel. It is a short and slender, and its dimensions do not warrant a full development of character. Though the characters are slightly drawn, they are powerful and consistent. The character of Shakti certainly leaves an impression, particularly the picture we get of her as a wounded and angered woman who, crushing the faded breath and striking her chest with clenched fist, vows revenge. Swarnakumari Ghosal's next work, An Unfinished Song, 1913, raises several important issues relating to love, man-woman relationship, marriage, construction of female identity, the impact of the West, the East-West encounter, and nationalism. Similar to Torudas Bianca's, Similar to Torudas Bianca and the novels of Supervised Satyanathan, an unfinished song has an autobiographical touch. An unfinished song may be characterized as a lyrical novel which has some of the features of the stream of consciousness through. The symbolism of the song of Chotu lingering in Monu's memory and consciousness awaiting its completion dominates the whole novel in a way similar to that in which the symbolism of To the Lighthouse dominates Virginia Woolf. The novel, An Unfinished Song, is an open-ended novel. It begins with the beginning of love and ends with the regeneration. The novel ends not with the denouement worked out by a sudden recognition or revelation of identity, but by a slow clearing up of all doubts and mystery. Next. Dharamji Malabari, 1853 to 1912, was a Parsi born in Gujarat and acquired the title of Malabari as his family traded in sandalwood and spices from Malabar coast. Though verse has the medium for Malabar's satires to begin with, he changed over to prose and he took to journalism. He was in fact more successful as a satirist in prose than in verse, and even as his verse satires were a close resemblance to those of the 18th century poets, his satirical essays remind us of the essays of Addison, Steele, and Goldsmith. It is difficult to assess the nature and magnitude of the influence Malavari had on Indian writers and fiction in English, but in his own time and on posterity, but it cannot be denied that his prose writings anticipated much that was to follow in the succeeding decades, particularly the fictional and satirical works of writers like Dulquer Anand, Khushwant Singh, and Neeraj Chaudhary. It would thus not be an extravag- it should not it would thus not be an exaggeration to say that Malabari set the pace for the kind of English writing in India which combined the elements most vital to good fiction, namely realism, satire, irony, and humor. Next. A contemporary of Malabari, Nagesh Vishwanath Pai, 1860 to 1920, is basically remembered for his work Strange Sketches from Chakmakpur, 1894, and The Angel of Misfortune, 1904. The latter is a narrative poem, while the former is a pseudo-fictional work. Chakmakpur is a fictitious creation of the author, though the, though the town as it is pictured could be any town in India. In fact, Chakmakpur is a forerunner of the fictitious towns which provide the setting for the novels of R.K. Narayan, Rajarao, Nagarajan, and Bhavani Bhattacharya. These novelists owe their success and popularity in no means a measure to the settings they have created for the novels and to their ability to take the reader into the charming world of their own, be it Malgudi, Kedaram, Kansapura, or Sonamitti. Each of these little worlds has a personality and individuality all its own, and yet it may be any town anywhere in India and emphasizes the essential unity which marks the Indian ethos. The significance of Nagesh Pai's sketches lies in their being the first to place characters in a setting which is at once local and pan-Indian, and an attempt to make character, action, and destiny bound up in subtle way with the character and the spirit of the locale. Next. Next. The, the realism that was later to be taken to new heights in the writings of Dulquer Anand and later by Khushwant Singh. This is not the social realism of Ulkraj Anand. The realism of Hindupur has it in its aspect of grossness, and it is down to earth and ruthless in its graphic description of human behavior. Next, the triumvirate and their impact on the pre-independence Indian English novel. Indian fiction in English emerged out of almost 6 decades of intellectual and literary gestation that had begun in 1930 with the triumvirate of R.K. Narayan, Gulkraj Anand, and Raja Rao. It is with their advent that the actual journey of the Indian English novel begins. The early Indian English novels, which were merely patriotic, gained a rather contemporary touch with their arrival. The 1930s were the beginning of the fertile era in Indian writing in English. The political scene dominated by Gandhiji, the Satyagraha movement, the Round Table Conference, and the various other social and cultural factors ignited the spirit of the Indian writers that earned international renown. The novelist Mulkraj Anand, Raja Rao, and R.K. Narayan form a trilogy of early Indian writing in English, and with their advent ushered a new era in the field. Under the profound Gandhian influence, Mulkraj Anand's Untouchable (1935), Coolie (1936), Two Leaves and a Bud (1937), The Village (1939) take up the issues concerning the exploitation of the underdogs and the have-nots of the Indian society and treats them with the sympathy and respect due to human beings. The sweeper, the peasant, the plantation labor, the city worker, the sepoy all emerge alive from his novels, anguished, wretched, yet human, and vividly portrayed in spite of the suffering. R.K. Narayan too began his career as a writer in the same year, 1935, with Swami and Friends. His other works, The Bachelor of Arts (1936), The Dark Room (1935), appeared in a quick succession, but the next publication of The English Teacher (1945) came after a long gap. The third of the great trilogy is Raja Rao. His novels are few, and of them only Kantapura is published in the first half of the 20th century. Kantapura is a simple plot structure and has a simple language and philosophy. The novel set in 1930s in Gandhiji's golden decade, when the spark of genuine nationalism and awakening, typically Indian in its yoking of social and spiritual values, swept through a country, raising all barriers, communal, religious, and intellectual. Next. Untouchable, 1935, the shortest of Anand's novels, is a poignant recordation of a day's experience in the life of Baka. Born into the family of sweepers, one of the neglected communities of the traditional Hindu caste structure, he is a sweeper with a difference. He is young, intelligent, and sensitive, and thus more prone to suffering. Like all the untouchables, he is condemned to live in a world where the day is dark as the night, and the night pitch dark. Surprisingly, his presence in the midst of dirt has not stained the innocence, purity, and responsiveness of his heart. From the plight of the social outcast in Untouchable, Anand in Coolie (1936) turns to the lot of another class of underprivileged in modern Indian society, but in Coolie the range and scope of the novel's fiction widens. His canvas expands. There is the orchestration of the themes barely touched upon in Untouchable and Coolie. Coolie is the odyssey of Munnu, an orphaned village boy from the Kangra hills, who sets out in search of a livelihood. His several roles, including working as a domestic servant in an urban middle-class household in Shamnagar, as a worker in a pickle factory, and a coolie in the bazaar in Daulatpur, as a laborer in a cotton mill in Bombay, and as a rickshaw puller in an Anglo-Indian household in Shimla. Coolie is about double the size of Untouchable, and the action is spread over some years and moves from villages to town, from town to city, and from city to Bombay, and from Bombay to Shimla. The pace of writing, as in Untouchable, is swift, and the scenes follow in quick succession. Thus, Coolie is a Picard's novel presenting the journey of the protagonist and the cross section of India. It highlights the pains and predicaments of the poor working class. Next. After having described the plights of the landless peasants in Coolie and Two Leaves and a Bud, Anand sets for himself a far more ambitious task in the trilogy dealing with Lal Singh. The three novels, The Village, 1939, Across the Black Waters, 1940, and The Sword and the Sickle, 1942, constitute a trilogy in which the protagonist is the same throughout and the actions of which covers a period of several years. Next. A contemporary to Anand is R.K. Narayan, whose first work, Swami and Friends, 1935, was published in the same year in which was published Anand's Antakshila. He published his first novel in 1935 and in a quick succession appeared Bachelor of Arts, 1936, and The Dark Room, 1938, thus forming a trilogy of sorts. After a long silence comes The English Teacher. The three novels, Swami and Friends, Bachelor of Arts, and The English Teacher form a trilogy. The novel is remarkable for the author's understanding of the Swami and Friends is remarkable for the author's understanding of the child's psychology and for his depiction of the carefree, buoyant world of schoolboys in a most realistic and convincing manner. It renders people and their actions as they appear to boys at school age. Swami is one of Narayan's immortal creations. Besides displaying Narayan's skill in characterization, the novel also brings out the brilliance of his humor. There might be some looseness in construction, still the novel is creditable post-achievement and it fully displays Narayan's peculiar genius. His second novel is The Bachelor of Arts, is a mature work and deals with the larger and deals with the later stage of life in a young man's career when he is about to leave college and enter life and is neither a boy nor a man but somewhere in between. Next. Many literary historians hold the view that novel as a literary form came to India by a simple transmission from the West and, and that its emergence should be explainable from in terms of a process of ready adoption of the Western form. But none of the earliest novels, either in Hindi or in English or in Indian English, are imitative of the English models which the writers of this period might be expected to have followed. Neither Rani Ketki Ki Kahani, Sham Shapna, and Bhagyavati in Hindi, nor Govind Samant, Rajmohan's wife, Bianca, and an unfinished song are imitative of the English novel of the West. Thus, the Hindi or the Indian English novel followed its own pattern of gradual evolution under a set of socio-economic conditions and did not appear on the literary scene all of a sudden under the impact of the Western literature. Neither were all the early Hindi and Indian English novel works tales rather than novels, but were the novel of the Indian kind. Thus, Sham Shapna is attributed to be the first novel of the Indian kind in Hindi, while Govind Samant and Ragmohan's wife can be credited to be among the first novels of the Indian kind in Indian writing in English. In the same manner, Pariksha Guru and the works of Premchand in Hindi and the works of the triumvirate in Indian writing in English can be classified into the category of the novel of the English kind. The novel is an essentially alien form, and the form itself is related to the Western concept of society and the place of the individual in the society. As in characterization, so in form, the Hindi and the Indian novel in English has to adapt itself to its own basic philosophy of life, and in them is found a variety of bold experimentation with form. Thus, these works become allegorical pictures of India, the rural India, which one finds in the village. The fact can be confirmed with Govind Samant, Kantapura, Godal, the village, and Two Leaves and a Bud, among others. Next, the initial work of Indian writing in English and the Hindi novels share a striking similarity in their form, content, and style. Most of the novels which appeared showed a predilection for romance, dream, and poetry, not to speak of adventures and escapades of an incredible sort. The reassertion of the realism in the novels of Indian writing in English is observed to come with the publication of sketches like those of Malabari and Nagesh Vishwanath. As a pioneer of journalism in India, with a writer of sketches with a satirical and reformistic purpose, and as a pilgrim reformer. Next. Prior to Premchand, the Hindi novels were generally romances, magical mysteries of the entertaining kind, and either inclined to Sanatani ideology or of its opposing reformist ideology, lacking the elements of a full-fledged novel. The same applies equally to the novel in Indian writing in English. They earlier lacked a correlation or association to the contemporary social, political, and economic conditions prevailing during the time. In the struggle for supremacy between the Sanatana inclined writers like Mehta Jaram and others, and the reformist writers, it is the reformists that triumph, and Premchand provides this writing a new direction and an identity with the term Adarshonmukh Yatharthat that can be translated roughly into English as idealistic realism. The works by earlier Hindi writers that were either entirely didactic or entirely with the purpose of entertainment are fused together by Premchand and made more realistic, entertaining, authentic, and meaningful. Premchand's views regarding the novel are vastly different than his predecessors, and in the same manner, the difference is manifested in the triumvirate of Indian writing in English, too, from their predecessors. The entire phase from 1915 to 1936 in Hindi literature is so dominated by Premchand that no other writer even comes close to him in literary standards. So immense is the contribution of Premchand to Hindi literature that such a vast number of issues ranging from poverty, mismatched marriage, farmer-zamindar relationship, social evils like dowry, extravagance, exhibitionism, and the political issues like rejection of capitalism, among others, have been raised by him in his works that leave aside Hindi novel. Even novel in Indian writing in English lacks such a dynamic writer representing such authentically the then contemporary prevailing conditions. He has a very comprehensive understanding of the various sections of society, ranging from the aristocratic feudal characters, the poor village peasants, the women characters such as Rania in Godan or Suman in Sivasadan. The teenager's psychology, as depicted in Nirmala, the intellectuals like Professor Mehta, and the capitalists represented by Tantha and Khanna in Godan. The realism, artistry, and tenderness with which he has created the characters in his works is unparalleled and unsurpassed in the entire fiction. He is founder of a new trend in Hindi fiction, He, he depicted with deep understanding the tragedy and pathos of their dark lives, their rare smiles and unceasing sorrows, their frustrations and their hopes. His works threw up strongly contrasted characters, seldom seen in any other writer, surpassing the chaos of the still feudal rural setting with its profound faith in future renewal. Next, the Hindi and the Indian novel in English have retained their individual identity not only in the modes of storytelling and narrative techniques, but also in the values and traditions they have been upholding and in the concept of man and his relationship with the world. The two classes of fiction take up almost similar issues, and the treatment varies from the writer to writer, from Hindi to English literature. Undoubtedly, the Hindi novel and the novel in Indian writing in English together, besides adding vividness to literature, enrich the readers with a better understanding of the issues faced by the people in the Indian subcontinent. Thank you. Over to you, Varun.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chauhan sir, for such an insightful and provocative session. A lot of these novels are unexplored in the realms of research. You have meticulously presented them. Your knowledge in the field of pre-independence Indian English novels and the Hindi novels has truly left a prolific impression on us. I am sure everyone here has obtained a new perspective to evaluate varieties of text with your views and detailed summary, which you have provided with textual quotations of this text. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Varun.
Now, now it is time for question answer session. If anyone has any kind of queries or questions related to this topic, please feel free to put them in the comment section of YouTube. Yes, sir. We have a question from Ashish Shondarwa.
Yeah,
Uh, he is saying that he would like to know why is this study still important in contemporary times or in today, present time.
yeah. Uh, the pre-independence period was a very dynamic, very uh, transitory, and it 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 is a this period is a learning experience because of the age it represents. Uh, it is necessary to know our history, and these literary works represent the issues faced by the society or by the contemporary society. Not only does it bring to light the social, cultural, economic, political issues of the time, but it is also important from the point of view the way a literary form or a genre develops. The way we see the form novel today was much different in that age. That is why this age becomes important. The, the form and its growth becomes important, especially because the novel form is not an Indian form. It is a Western form which is transplanted in India, and it is the Indian soil in which it grows. Thus, the growth of the Indian novel, either in Hindi or Bengali or Indian writing in English, is different from the way the novel in the West grows. That makes this study important.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. There are several other questions. There is a question from Hetvi Thanki. She is asking, Sir, did the British English colonial education implemented by the British rule in India have any impact on the framing of these English as well as Hindi novels penned down by various Indian writers?
That's a very good question because the entire study attempts to portray that the English as a language was introduced because of the colonial rule, and with the colonial rule and the introduction of the English education, uh, Macaulay's education, a large number of Indians had English education, and this English education also framed their ideas and vision. At the same time, even the writers like Premchand and even Lala Srinivas, whose first, uh, whose Pariksha Guru is considered to be the first novel in Hindi of the English kind. All these writers have exposure to the writing in English, so they have directly or indirectly influenced the writing. But what the good writers have attempted is they have accepted the form, but they have not Englishized the entire novel because the issues and the way of and the treatment of this work is Indian. So it has English education has influenced. At the same time, uh, the writers have tried to be out of the influence also. They have not been totally influenced. They have their own vision and their own ideas.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. There is other question from Astha Dhokia. She is asking that, sir, how did colonialism shape the emergence of Indian English and Hindi novels in the pre-independence era?
I think it's almost similar because colonialism uh, introduced English education, and that was a pan-Indian phenomenon. The influence of this education was a pan-Indian phenomenon. That is why neither Bengali, nor Hindi, nor Gujarati, nor Marathi, or any of the Indian writers in any of the regional languages could remain uninfluenced by them. So, so colonialism brought the novel form, and the novel form is then found in the Indian writing in English and also in Hindi, as well as in Gujarati and other re- regional languages.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. There is a question from Rahul Chudasama. He is asking, how does the concept of Genesis, beginning or origin, manifest in pre-independence novels?
No, the beginning is the most important part. That is why the beginning from a scratch is the most difficult. That is why it took so many years for the novel to come to acquire a appropriate form. That is the novel in Hindi and novel in Indian writing in English. That is why you had narratives, you had prose, which was not having uh, the novel form as such. That is why in Hindi it begins with Rani Keti ki Kahani by Inshallah Khan, and it takes 77 years for the next novel to come. And also, there are many other challenges at the same time. Uh, see, Hindi, as we see today, was not as it was in those times. In fact, earlier there was domination of the Brij Bhasha. Uh, Even Awadhi existed for the literary works. This Devanagari or Khari Boli which comes, which you find today, it took a lot of time to for Hindi to take up this Khari Boli and have the works that we have today. So there are many challenges. That is why the genesis or the beginning and the growth is very important. And that is why you find that once it has got a proper foundation like Premchand in Hindi or the triumvirate in English, they rise and you have a large number of works of good quality coming out after that.
Okay, sir. Sir, thank you very much for satisfying the queries of the students. Now, since there are no further questions, with your permission, shall we end this session?
Uh, Thank you, Varun, very much. And I again thank
Yes,
the
sir.
university, the vice chancellor, the English department, the HOD of the English department, and Dr. Firoz Sheikh sir for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Sorry, yes, sir. On behalf of the members of Dr. A.K. Singh Literary Club and the Department of English, Bhaktakavi Narsimhata University, Junagadh, I extend my sincere and deepest gratitude to Dr. Pramod Chauhan, sir, for his inspiring expert talk. Sir, thank you again for giving us your precious time. On behalf of the Department of English, I am also thankful to the online audience as well. Have a wonderful day. Let's grow and educate together. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.